With more on this, here's Dr. John Blaxland. He's a professor at ANU's Strategic and Defence Studies Centre. John, welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Ros.
Firstly, one of the main criticisms of this executive order is that rather than tighten homeland security, it actually puts America more at risk. What's your view on that?
Well, the concern is that the blanket approach is really going to weaken America's soft power. This is one of the most attractive things about the American essence, if you like. The United States has very much an appeal to the world because of its approach to welcoming people from all the different lands. This new approach is very much stands very much in contrast to that approach. But what's worrying is also that this is really not reflecting the technology and where the intelligence community stands today. We have the ability today to monitor and to have fidelity in information about people coming across borders that is at an unprecedented level, and that the approaches that arguably were last used during the Second World War are unnecessarily blunt and controversial and eroding of American goodwill around the world. So that's very disconcerting. But equally of concern is, the selection of countries that have been chosen to be put on this program. Let's not forget the countries from which terrorists that have successfully struck in the United States have come from include Egypt, the Saudi Arabia, Jordan and United Arab Emirates. Now, these aren't on the list. Now, I can understand on one level why they're not on the list. They're countries that the United States has fairly robust arrangements with, but it sends an awkward message about the United States' approach to international engagement, its approach to resolving the so-called long war, what used to be called the global war on terrorism. This arguably is not dampening, but it's actually putting more fuel on the flames. And hopefully that's not the case, but it's certainly, we've seen strong emotional reactions. This is likely to feed the rhetoric of American ill.
And could more countries, other than the 7 already on the list, be added to that list? And that has been not dismissed by the White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus. If that happens, what will be the consequences?
Well, it depends on who gets picked to be added, of course, but it's hard to know exactly what the consequences are beyond this eroding of American goodwill. And that's a particular concern when you think about what the United States is already committed to doing in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, where Australian soldiers are also operating alongside the US forces. These are countries where American goodwill is critical to success. The eroding of that goodwill has to be factored into the equation, and my concern is that that is not being done at the moment.
Donald Trump says that extreme vetting will now be put in place from people from those countries named on the list. What is extreme vetting? What more can be done?
Well, that's right. What is extraordinary rendition? These terms are euphemisms for actions that actually speak ill of America's, fairly liberal approaches to these things by and large. Let's not forget, the United States is the democracy that the world has looked to by and large as the model for liberty and openness. So what we're seeing is the use of this language, this use of extreme terminology that's ambiguous about what it exactly means, opens the door for it to be misinterpreted and for misinformation to be put out there and used by Daesh and the so-called ISIS, the so-called Islamic State, and other extremist groups to feed the rhetoric of the United States belligerence and the United States' purported ill intent towards them. Now that's disconcerting, and it has ramifications not just for the United States, but for the Western world and the world writ large.
Dr. John Blaxland, thank you for your thoughts.
My pleasure.